Hello, everyone. Hi, Mayra. Thank you for joining us today in Education Connect, which is a new show that we have launched with the intention to bring resources to our community. And today we have a really exciting topic. We're going to be talking about how to recognize stress in youth. We have been seeing in the headlines recently, specifically here in the state of Nevada, that a lot of talk about the student suicide, and Myra and I both know that just because they're in the headlines doesn't mean this is a new topic for us. Nevada has been ranked the lowest for mental health services for the longest time, and Myra will be talking about and sharing with us how to identify signs in youth, how to recognize the stress. As a mom, sometimes we don't know what can be signs, and sometimes we think like, why is my kid acting out, or what this is happening, and it's hard to understand unless you have a background. We often say that kids don't come with a manual, and sometimes we see signs in the friends of our kids and we are not understanding them either. So I think that it's very important for the community always being paying attention to what is happening, not just with when it comes to our children, but to our neighbors, to our friends, to the people that we care and the people that we love. And Mayra Pacheco, just to give her a brief introduction, she works for the Nevada Institute for Research for Children's Research and Policy, long name, and they are very long name. I like, it's a funny story. I work there and I still have a hard time saying the name. But they also have an effort inside of the Nevada Institute for Children Research and Policy that is called Prevent Child Abuse Nevada. And in that effort, they have several different programs, and this is one of them, which is about how to identify toxic stress, how to recognize signs. And she's an expert in the topic. She's been training professionals, mental health workers, teachers, educators, and the community in general. So we're very honored and excited that you accept our invitation to be with us today to talk about a topic that is definitely scaring the community. While we think that is a new topic, it's not a new topic, and it's been happening for a long time. But with the rise of the pandemic, we are now paying more attention, and this is something that you guys have been advocating for a while.
Yes, definitely. And I love that you say it's not new, because yeah, we have been ranked the lowest in youth mental health for a long time, and there has been efforts, and I feel like now with the pandemic, the stress that children experience has been noticed, has been put up in the forefront, and we appreciate that. That is an opportunity for us to really take advantage and find ways where we can support our youth, focus on mental health, and really also help the parents and help our community in identifying, but in providing those appropriate supports for children as well. So I'm really happy to be here with y'all today.
Really, thank you for taking, like I seen a lot of our viewers that are here. Please make sure if you have questions, leave them there, and we'll be trying to answer them as we get them. So I will post in the chat under the video. So feel welcome to ask any questions that you have. And Mayra, do you need me to share your screen, or?
Let me go ahead and try to share the screen. And as I am sharing the screen, just a little intro for me. I have worked in schools for quite a bit of time. I worked from kindergarten. Oh, Valeria, can you see my slides? Hopefully you can. Yes, perfect. Awesome. So right now I just see the slide. I don't see the chat box or anything. So do let me know, Valeria, if we have any questions or any comments. But I have worked with youth for a while. I worked from kindergarten, actually pre-K, all the way to high school seniors. Even with college freshmen, I have done work with. So I have engaged with their families, and I have some of that knowledge where I really am able to, it really helped me understand some of the stress and the struggles that children at different ages face, as well as the support that is needed for parents and for our community. So today we're going to talk about those techniques on how to recognize stress in youth. But first we want to know, what is stress? right? This is not a topic that is commonly, talked about, and we use the word stress a lot. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm stressed, or I'm trying to live a stress-free life, right? I don't have time for stress. So in this training, I want you to, there are a few things that I want you to take from this training. And one of them is for us to accept that stress is everywhere and we are constantly experiencing it. So we have to start by the definition, right? Oh, and just as before we move forward, we will have some conversation about toxic stress. We'll talk about child maltreatment. We'll talk about acts of violence as well. Some of those traumatic experiences that children and many of us may have experienced. So I know that this may trigger some uncomfortable emotions. Please make sure that we take care of ourselves, and we are all respectful. I love when I see engagement in social media. Please be respectful with our comments and create a safe space for each other. We are here to learn how to create that safe space for our children, so we have to model that as well. And I also throw in here the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I usually do the resources at the end, but this one I just wanted to put first thing in line in case anyone needs it. Just make sure that you know that we do have a Suicide Prevention Lifeline that you can call at any time, and they will respond and help you out. Right? So let's talk about what is stress. Now, I am the stress guru. I love talking about stress because I want our community to understand that stress is everywhere. We constantly experience it. Stress is anything that upsets your body's equilibrium. Feeling cold, unless you really like to feel cold. But if we don't like to feel cold, feeling cold is going to be a stress. You are walking and you trip. That is stress. You are, having a deadline to meet or homework, right? That is stress. So for a while I heard, and there's even books, don't stress the mess and live a stress-free life. And stress will continue to be there. We can be a very privileged person and we will still experience stress. We may experience less stress, or the stress that we experience is going to look very different, right? But the stress is there. So we have to remember that, right? Stress is anything that upsets our body's equilibrium, and then our body is going to respond trying to reestablish that equilibrium back up. So a quick example, let's say that you wake up in the morning and you had a good night's sleep. You wake up and you start to prepare breakfast for your kids, and you make them eggs and toast, right? You're on time, everything is flowing nicely, your children get ready, and then they sit down to have breakfast, and they tell you, ugh, eggs and toast? I want pancakes. Can we have pancakes? I'm not gonna eat the eggs and toast. And they start to fuss about it. And that is going to stress you out a little bit, right? Now, we're gonna respond in a way, right? We're trying to reestablish that equilibrium back, right? And you want to happen what you want. You have in your mind, this is what should happen, right? But it's not happening. My children are not eating their food. So what can I do to reestablish that equilibrium, how I'm feeling, and get them to do what I want them to do, right? That is eat their breakfast in this particular case. So there are different ways that you can respond. You can respond by, taking a deep breath and saying, all right, this is not an ideal response that I was looking for, but let's work it out. And ask, why don't you want to eat eggs and toast today? And you're listening to them and you say, I understand that you don't want, it's not ideal for you to have eggs and toast today, but we agreed that we are only going to have pancakes once a week, and that was yesterday. So we cannot have we cannot have pancakes anymore this week, and the breakfast is already ready. Eggs are good for you. You have your toast. You can put some jelly on your toast, right? And that can make it a little bit more sweet, right? And you can enjoy that. And then that gets your child, okay, I'll eat it. It is what it is. I have to eat this food. I don't want it to go to waste. All right, great. That's response one, right? Another response is you're like, I'm not dealing with this today. And you yell at your children and you say, you need to eat what I just made. You have no option. Either you eat this or you go to school without breakfast, or you go to grandma's house without breakfast. Your choice. And then you walk away. And your children were just, a little bit shook by that response. We are going to have different responses, right? Some of them are more appropriate than others. It is really nice, and we want to ideally have an appropriate match between the type of stressor and the type of response. So me immediately yelling at my children, right, as a response, it was a very high intensity, right? It was a high intensity response, and it wasn't a very appropriate match, right? My child was saying, I don't want to eat this, right? It's understandable. Sometimes we get food and we just, you're like, oh, I really wish I had pizza, but all I have is, chicken in the fridge. So we have to learn, how to have those appropriate responses. It can be, for example, if I am walking and I trip, I can say, well, I didn't fall, right? Shake off. I got a little bit concerned there for a second. My heel didn't crack. I'm good. Let's continue walking. Or I can let it upset me, right? And I say, oh, what else is going to happen today? Or I can start yelling at the floor, right, at the ground. And I start, just yelling at the floor and complaining about the city and the cracks in the streets. And then I start to spiral down and have a whole 5-minute, rant on this. All of those are responses. And all of those are seeking to reestablish equilibrium, but some are going to be more efficient than others, right? Some, instead of reestablishing that equilibrium, are going to dip it a little bit more, or they're going to just bump it up a little bit, but you don't get to be in that full balanced state again. And it may take you longer to do that. So it's the same with our children, right? With youth. I would see, for example, in classrooms, children that would spill their crayons and they would have a full meltdown over dropping their crayons on the floor. They spilled their little tin, and it had been 10 minutes of them crying nonstop. And I would get called into the classroom and they would tell me, this child has been crying for 10 minutes. I have no idea why. And when I help the child calm down and we figure out, what's going on, it was, I didn't understood the problem, or I dropped my crayons, or, I couldn't get my pencil to work. And that led to a really high intensity response, right? That wasn't an appropriate match, but it happened. So we have, this is my reflective slide. We have to look at the way in which our children, our youth, respond to different types of stress. And so I said stress is everywhere, right? So not just about how they are responding right now, with just the pandemic and just their thoughts and feelings in the pandemic. It's about, what about school? What specific about school is stressing them out? How about when the internet is not working well and, they get disconnected? How do they respond to that type of stress? Or when you make eggs and toast and they don't want eggs and toast, how do they respond to that? And it's very important for us to also see ourselves as parents, professionals. If you're taking this class and you work, if you work with children, we need to notice ourselves too, right? Evaluate ourselves. And with situations like the pandemic, like uncertainty in life, we may see that we're starting to get more inappropriate matches. We won't be able to work towards changing that unless we identify them first. Okay, so we want to look at how long does the stress last too. So for example, this is going to be my last sample before we move forward. Let's say that you are going to work, you're running late, but you have just enough time to make it on time, and you have a very important meeting first thing in the morning. So you're driving and you're like, all right, you're already somewhat stressed out about it, right? Because you have to be there on time. So you're rushing out a little bit, and then you get stuck in the freeway. There's an accident and you're stuck there and there's nothing you can do but to wait for that accident to be clear and then continue. You cannot exit right now, you're stuck there. There are the different responses that we can have to that situation, right? I can start to get, I'm naturally going to start to get more anxious, right? That's something that probably is going to happen because at this point, I know I'm not going to make it. So what can I do? I can call my supervisor, let them know I'm stuck in traffic. This is out of my control, right? And let them know that I'll be there as soon as I can. I'm going to be proactive and let them know right now rather than letting them know once the meeting has started. I am going to take some deep breaths, listen to some music, right? Say, all right, I cannot, I have no control over this, but I have control about my breathing. I have control about what I say to myself. I start using some positive self-talk and say, you got this. It's just a moment. This is temporary. We'll move forward from here, right? And that is helping you. That is helping your body reestablish that equilibrium. I could also, right, let my anxiety start, heighten up more, and I start to get a panic attack. And I am calling my supervisor, and as I'm calling my supervisor, I cannot even get my words out because my stress is just bubbling up and bubbling up. And then I start with negative self-talk. I start saying, you're probably going to lose this job. You keep messing up. That is a coping response, but it's not helping us reestablish that equilibrium, right? And it just somewhat dips it more, right? So after that happened and you get back to the office, let's say that your supervisor says, all right, I understand that this happened. Please make sure that it doesn't happen again. You were very needed at this meeting. I didn't know what to give them. You had the handouts, and they start, telling you of all the things that went wrong in the meeting because you were not there. You say, all right, well,
Mayra, I want to know how many times you have done this.
right? That's how many times that's how many times that's happened to me. That's sorry.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
like that's happened to me a few times. And I have responded differently, right? So I'm giving you examples. Some of them might be mine, some of them might not, right? Well, I can be already upset, right, and heighten in stress and say, well, you know what? I did not ask the people to get in that accident. Do you think I asked to be trapped in this situation? This was out of my control, and I'm sorry that things didn't go great at the meeting, but there's no reason for you to also be being so harsh on me right now. And I start to and then the supervisor says, well, you have a responsibility, and things are starting to climb up and to escalate. And then you say, all right, you know what, I'm just going to go to my office. I understand, you get a write-up or something and you go to the office and then you're like, oh, this is terrible. And you start to just let that just take over your entire day at this point. And you tell your coworkers, don't even talk to me right now because I am not in the mood. I had a rough morning. Didn't you just hear what happened with Mr. T? I'm not having it. So don't talk to me right now. You get home and you tell your kids, you know what? Look at the fridge, see what's in the fridge. I'm just going to go to the room, watch Netflix until I go to sleep. So y'all handle it on your own. That is a very high intensity response that lasted for the entire day, right? Do we have days like this sometimes? Yes, right? We all do. However, they should not be common. So if we notice that, you know what, lately I have been, clashing on with my coworkers, with my partner, with my kids, and it's frequent, and just one negative interaction takes over the entire day, and it's that high duration. We have to pay attention to that. We're not perfect, so we are going to have days like that. Your children are going to have days like that, but they should not be frequent. If we start to notice that they are frequent, we need to make sure that we manage them. We need to make sure that we identify them, and then we start working towards improving those responses. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the different types of stress and how to identify them, right? So now we talked about stress overall, right? Now we're going to talk about the different types and some of those examples of what do we experience, what do children experience that are part of each of these types of stress. Do let me know if you have questions on each of these. I will go through fast. We do have a hour and a half training on this one if you want to take it, but this will be pretty fast for the purpose of this share presentation right now. So positive stress are brief increases in our heart rate. Those are are going to be caused by typical experiences, daily things that happen. This could be losing a game. This can be, going to school, even though it's virtual right now, but having to wake up, sit on the computer, and be staying in the computer, right? That is going to be a typical stress right now. Not having what you want for lunch or dinner, or getting injured playing a game. And that also is going to be that positive stress. Okay, those types of experiences. Maybe your children are having a little sibling battle between a toy or something. That is positive stress. Now, anytime we experience stress, some things happen to our body. The first thing, well, they all happen at the same time, but the first thing that I want you to know is that cortisol and the stress hormones get released, right? Our brain is going to release cortisol, going to receive cortisol, and what cortisol does is it tells us to be alert. So the stress hormones that get released into our body tells us to be alert, that something is going on that is not planned. So when a child is learning to walk, right, the first time they're learning to walk, right, and then they fall, the first thing that happens is that child is going to be on alert mode. Before they cry, before they look for an adult, which usually that's what they do, right, they are going to pause and have that little moment, right? And that is when we are on alert mode, right? Cortisol tells you, hey, something is not going as planned. Watch out. So it's great for survival, right? When you are driving and someone cuts you off in traffic, you get that shot, right, of the stress hormones, right? Your heart rate increases, and you're going to see that your breathing passages open up, your eyes widen up, right? And you move very quickly. You swerve to avoid getting hit by that car. Or if someone goes in and you have to brake, you brake right then and there. That's what it's for. It's a life-saving technique, right? For our brain to release, for our bodies to release cortisol, for our brain to be, on that alert mode. So when it comes to positive stress, it's going to be very mild, right? When you are walking and you trip, you have that little moment of stress, or when you feel like you lost your cell phone or your wallet and you have that little freak out moment, you're like, where is it? Right? It's temporary. It's very short. It should not last for a long period of time. So ideally, children should not need any buffering support necessary on these types of stress. At the beginning, when it's the first times they are experiencing this type of stress, they are going to need a guide, right? They are going to need you. The parent or caretaker is the coping strategy, right? The adult staff in a school. If it's something that the child is going through in the school, right? The adult staff or a peer might be that buffering support. Ideally, we want it to be an adult, right? That is guiding the child on how to respond. So if it's the first time that the child lost a game, they need to know what that means. Children won't know what losing means. They're going to learn it, right? So we have a conversation with our child. We tell them that losing is part of the game. You win, you lose. There's going to be winners and losers at different times, right? If you are new to a game, it's very likely that you're going to lose pretty frequently, right? I know it's not ideal. So when you lose, I know it's okay. We may feel sad. We may feel, frustrated, right? But let's think about what can we do to improve next time. What can, let's the more you practice, the better you will get, right? The more rules you learn, right, the better you'll know how to play this game.
Yeah,
So
so I guess in other words, what you're saying it's important to also learn how to cope, to teach children to learn how to cope with stress early on so that they become more resilient, right?
yes, yes. So once they learn that from you, right? Your child should not be 10, 11 years old and coming to you telling you what to do. I lost the game. What should I do? No, right? They already absorb what you told them or what they observe, right? And they're applying it. Now, let's say that you don't have that conversation with your kid, and when they lose, all they get is mocking from others, and others mock them and make fun of them for losing the game. What are they going to learn? They're going to learn that losing a game is a very negative experience. It's something that should never happen. So anytime it happens, it's going to stress them more than when we teach them, how to cope, how to process that losing. Now if they experience it after we explain that to them, right, and we guide them through that situation, they know losing is part, right? It's part of the game. Instead of making it this big ball of stress, right? We help them learn how to process it. And eventually they should process it on their own. So that's why here we have no buffering support necessary. But they first have to learn it somehow, right? Okay, and then what happens in the long term? So in the long term, if we're able to teach our children how to successfully process these types of stress, that is what Valeria was saying, they develop coping skills, right? They're going to develop coping strategies that work for them. Positive self-talk, to take some deep breaths, right, before talking to someone if I am getting upset, right? And that is going to increase their resiliency, their ability to bounce back from difficult situations, and is going to boost their confidence. So in the example that I gave you with losing a game, the child that learned from their parents or caretaker, right, how to cope with that game, with losing, is going to have more confidence. Although they lost, it's not going to hurt their confidence. They're going to say, losing is part of this, right? I'm going to practice, I'm going to look, I'm going to do what I can to improve this. But I'm not going to take that loss and really let it affect me like terribly, right? Because I know that that's part of the game dynamic. But if I don't learn that, right? And we mentioned like the other child, right? That just observe and children were just mocking them and that's all they know. Anytime they lose a game, they are not going to feel confident. Their self-esteem is going to take a hit, and they're going to really see losing as a very negative experience, right? So positive stress and successfully processing this are going to be the training wheels for the next type of stress, which is tolerable stress. Okay, and with tolerable stress, we have more difficult situations. It can be the pandemic right now. It can be a divorce, the death of a loved one. For all of these types of stress, we know that they're not just gone in a day, right? They last for a longer period of time. Now, for these types of events, we want to make sure that there's a caring adult that is helping the child process. A child needs that. It's a necessity for the child to have an adult not only there, but helping them process the situation and what is going on. So for example, if it's the death of a loved one, we'll go with this example right now. The way that I talk about tolerable stress, I want you to picture ocean waves, right? An ocean, turbulent ocean, okay? Someone passes away that is really close to the family. Let's say my mom passes away. So my mom passed away. And at first, I'm going to be very overwhelmed by what happened, right? Probably, let's say it was unexpected, right? So I'm going to feel, as a parent, I'm going to feel like I am in this turbulent ocean and just everything is clashing, right? The waves are clashing and I am just trying to stay afloat, just trying to breathe and survive, right? That's how it is going to feel at first, right? And for your child as well, right? They had they loved grandma and now grandma is gone. And they're going to say, why is this happening? Question mark, right? So at the beginning, we're going to have this waves clashing, right? What we're trying to do with tolerable stress is we're trying to reach to be in calmer waters, where the waves are still going to come, but they'll eventually come every now and then, and they're going to be more calm, and we are learning how to ride the waves.
Mayra, we
Yes.
have a good question here, and I think is relevant to. Would you say that youth going through COVID and having to do maybe online learning can be under tolerable stress?
Yes, it can. So that can all be tolerable stress, definitely. Because just think, your children out of nowhere had to stay home. It was from one day to the other. You have to stay home. You have to change the whole way in which you learn, right? It was a big change. And it did not stopped existing from one day to the other. It's still going on, right? So this is tolerable stress. And it's still going on, and it will continue to go on for a bit more. So we're trying to make it tolerable, and we'll talk about toxic stress in a bit. Um, and how do we make it tolerable is about how we talk about it and the tools that we give. So how did we talk about the pandemic? How did we talk about this transition to the kids, right? How did we give them tools? And what was the even the tone of voice that we used when talking about this? All of that can either heighten the stress or can help mitigate that stress that's going on. So with that, you know what? We can go through the pandemic, right? So instead of the death of a loved one, let's go with the pandemic, right? At first, we felt the waves, right? Now we're trying to go into calmer waters. So we talk to our children about the pandemic. What is COVID-19? Does it mean, is this the scary thing that is coming by? How are we reacting to it? How are we learning from it? Did I give information to my child about what's going on? Why do we have to wear a mask now? Why can't I go out with my friends? How did we talk about it? So if we're trying to make this tolerable, we're talking about how this is a health issue, right? We're going through a pandemic. This means that there is a virus going on that is highly contagious. So we don't want that, right? We want to stay healthy. That is why the schools closed down. They're not going to be closed down forever, but for this time, until we're able to manage that, we have to stay home so we can be safe. And we're talking calmly about it. And your child is retaining that and learning that. Okay, I know, okay, fine, I cannot go to school, right? I cannot see my friends, but what can I do instead? What can I do to keep those connections? So we're trying to ride the waves. We're trying to get them to where they're going to still be, get upset, right? When we first talk to them about these situations, we want to validate their feelings. They can say, I'm scared. You know what, Dad? I'm scared. I'm scared of what if you get sick? What if I get sick? And you don't want to say, no, you won't get sick, because you don't know that, right? So we don't want to give false promises to our kids. We want to say, I understand that you're scared. We'll do everything we can to stay safe, right? To stay healthy. We'll follow the protocols. We'll follow what we can, right? But we're not doing it we're not increasing, the scary feeling there, right? We're not making false promises, but we're not increasing that feeling. We're saying we'll do what we can in our power to be safe, to stay healthy, to care for one another, right? So after that, that's going to help your child regulate. So I know that next time that your child says, oh, I wish I could be with my friends, right? What can I do instead? Oh, let's do Zoom meetings. I know I have a younger brother. He's 16, and they've been doing Zoom meetings to talk to each other since they cannot meet, and that's helped them out. And they just talk about their day or complaining about the teachers or the great teacher that they have or the homework that they have, and they vent out. And that really helps them decrease that stress.
And how do you? This is a good way to cope with stress, which I really appreciate. Is something that I even like when we were like in a completely lockdown. It was something that we also did. We had coffee with my friends and meal with my friends, and we did Zoom meetings, and it helped me to stay healthy and socialize. But how, like, I think one of the struggles is sometimes we don't know how to recognize signs. I know that maybe we're too early on and you're going to talk about that, but I just wanted to. So one of the mom is asking, how do we recognize signs of that my child is experiencing a stress? And I don't, I know that this is something that you're going to talk like in the next slide. So maybe Elvira, just wait a minute and we'll respond to your question.
Yes, I will talk about that in a bit as soon as we're done with toxic stress. So with tolerable stress, right, where both the adult and the child are working towards healing, right? I, as a parent, I'm learning about the pandemic. I'm taking, following the COVID-19 guidelines. I am doing what I can to improve my situation in what I can control. I am telling my child about things that we can control and things that we don't have control of, right? But we can work towards ways to improve the way that we feel, the way that we act, this new life that we're having. Now, for example, with the pandemic or with the death of a loved one, we don't want to say we'll be back to how we were before, because we won't, right? And with the death of a loved one, that's a brand new lifestyle that you have to live. You have to live a lifestyle where that individual is not there anymore, right? It's a new life. Same with the pandemic, right? We cannot say we'll go back to how things were, because it's going to be different, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, right? Right now we're talking more about mental health, right? So the way that the schools function are going to be different, right? So we don't want them to be hold on to the idea of things are going to go back, right? We have to say we're going to move forward, and we are going to get through this, right? And from where we are, we're gonna keep on going. Okay, so we know that adaptation and recovery is very likely, but there is a potential for lasting physical and emotional damage, and that is if we don't talk about it and we don't help the child process it. So I've had parents that are going through a divorce and they don't want to tell the child about what's going on, and they say, well, that's between us as parents. I don't want my child involved. However, it does involve your child, right? Because now your child is going to have a completely different life. It's not going to be the life that they had before. They're going into a big transition. So they need to be guided through that. It's for anything, right? Even if you move to another house, we want to help our child process these new events that are happening in their life, right? Because if there's no adult helping the child process, that is when we can go through situations of toxic stress. And give me just a second. I thought I had my computer connected, but I guess I just. Sorry, I want to make sure that the computer doesn't die. With toxic stress, that is when we are not able to process what's going on. Okay? So that's what I want you to remember. With toxic stress, we're not able to figure out what's happening here. So my parents are getting a divorce. They're not telling me anything about it. I just know that my parents are separating, and now I have to split my time, and I don't know how that's going to look like, and I want my parents to be together, and all I have is this big question mark where I just don't know why or what does this mean. Children who are being abused. If a child has been sexually abused and they were threatened to not say anything, they're not saying anything, right? They're going through toxic stress. They're not able to process what's happening to them, and they are afraid to share, to disclose what's going on, right? So all they have is this stress inside, and they're not able to make sense of it. They're not able to process it, and again, go from that turbulent ocean to calmer waves. Being in toxic stress is like being in this turbulent ocean where you're just trying to breathe, just trying to stay afloat and survive. You're not heading to any direction. You're just trying to get through the next minute. So the way that I talk about toxic stress and for image, your everyday life, when you are experiencing toxic stress, it's like you have a fire alarm in your brain all the time, and it's just blasting. And no matter what you do, it's just blasting and blasting and blasting. So imagine you have a fire alarm that is on full volume, and you're trying to talk to your kids or to your partner, or you're trying to pay attention to your teacher or talk to your friends, how would that affect you? How would that affect the way that you feel, the way that you live life, your eagerness to learn new things? How would that change? And I know that you might know someone, or you might have been in a state of toxic stress when you felt that way. You felt like you had that fire alarm blasting all the time. So what happens to our bodies? Our body is going to constantly be releasing the stress hormones, right? And telling you that to be on alert. It's going to say, hey, something is wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do about it, but something is going on. So I'm just going to keep alerting you, keep telling you that something is up so you can watch out. And your heart rate is going to constantly be increasing. Now, I know in the slide it says that there's no adult that buffers a child from stress. I want to make a point. This doesn't mean that the child doesn't have caring adults. It means that there's no caring adult helping process this particular situation. So if the child is being bullied and they're not telling the teacher, they're not telling the parents, they're not telling anyone, right? There's no adult to help buffer the stress, right? To help process what's going on. And we know that toxic stress can lead to possible lifelong changes, like the adoption of high-risk behaviors, struggles with memory and learning, developing anxiety, depression, cancer. It can lead to an early death. It is harmful for our bodies. Now, most of us won't be able to say, oh, I'm experiencing toxic stress. Or your child will not come to you and say, I'm experiencing toxic stress, right? And especially with toxic stress, we feel like we're just going through the motion, right? So we're not even, taking a moment to pause and look at how we're feeling. We're just going through it, trying to survive. So this is why, oh, sorry, I did not mean to put that slide. So that is why we want to look at the ways in which stress can manifest. So I know that this was the question. This is very important because we may not be able to, specifically say I'm dealing with toxic stress, or a child saying I'm experiencing this, but you're going to see changes in their behavior, in the way that they live life, in their feelings. So here we have this like checklist, right? Your child may feel, or you, right? We can all experience toxic stress or, heightened stress in general. We may feel easily agitated, frustrated, moody, right? I feel overwhelmed, like there's just too much going on and I have no control over it. And there's just so much and I can't. And they say things like, I can't anymore. Can't do this. This is too much. This is too difficult. They try new things and they give up easily, or they don't want to try new things. They have difficulty relaxing and quieting your mind, quieting their mind. For example, they may be very high functioning and they are doing great in school and they are reading and they are active in different things, but they are not able to calm down. They're not able to quiet their mind. Because once they start to try to calm down, well, that's when all the stress that has been there bubbles up, right? And they don't know what to do with it because they don't know how to process it. So it's important to know that we may have high functioning, youth, high functioning individuals that are doing great, but they're still having toxic stress. Okay, they may talk negatively about themselves or avoid their family or others, have low energy. Upset stomach, or stomach issues are very common when you are stressed out. So if your child is complaining about stomach aches and there's no reason as to why, you cannot think of anything, diet hasn't changed, it may be stress. Weak immune system. If your child is getting sick more frequently, that can also be due to stress. If that happens, our immune system takes a dip when we are dealing with a lot of stress. Anxiety, that's a common one. My high school students would tell me, what do you mean panic attacks are not okay? Everyone has them. I remember this just really hit me right there, because most of the high school students that I worked with had panic attacks commonly. They would have anxiety attacks. And they just learned to just let it pass, right? So they would say, I'm getting an anxiety attack, and they would just stay there. And we had to work on different coping strategies with them to help them prevent that from happening. But you may see that they start to get that. It goes with the overwhelming feeling as well. Constant worrying, and racing thoughts, issues learning, or remembering or retaining information too. Changes in appetite, being more impulsive or reactive, engaging in high-risk behaviors like substance use, or exhibiting nervous behaviors. They're biting their nails, they're fidgeting a lot, right? Now, there are some children that need fidgeting, right? That need different sensory objects to function the best they can, right? I am one of them where I cannot just focus on one thing, right? I need to be doing multiple things to feel like I am staying focused and productive. So if it's something that is not typical, right, we have to look at it. If it starts to increase, we're gonna have days where we feel frustrated, days where we don't want to talk to anyone. That's okay. We'll have a day here and there. But when you see that it's happening more than once or twice, and it's becoming a new thing where it's frequent, you want to make sure that you address it. Don't address it once it has gone too far. Once there's something that it's a big red flag in your face. You want to do it as soon as you recognize that any of these are starting to happen. Okay. Valeria, do you have any questions?
No, we don't have any questions right now. I think you've been answering them, all of them. We received a bunch of them at the beginning, but I think just keep going. A lot of people are watching and quietly watching, so just keep at it.
Okay, perfect. Just let me know whenever you want me to wrap it up, because I know I can talk for hours and hours about stress and coping strategies. But just to give you a quick view here of how our neurons work. So if you see here, our typical neuron makes all of these connections, right? It's connecting, we are multitasking, making different thoughts. We're thinking in the long term of what's going to happen. We have a set plan in mind, or looking at our goals. And then we see how a neuron damaged by toxic stress looks, and how many less connections they're making. So this is not just about the way that we feel, right? This has to do with our brain functioning. And I want to make sure that you remember that. Stress affects our brain architecture, affects it has epigenetic modifications where it can change the way that our genes are expressed. So we have to remember this. This has a neurobiological basis. We don't want to just separate that, right? It's all together. Now, sorry, that was from my extended training. Now, we know that adversity can lead to poor outcomes. And as I mentioned, going through adversity can change the way that our brain functions, and that can lead to maladaptive behaviors and other diseases, which are the high-risk behaviors, right? We know that adverse childhood experiences determine the likelihood of the 10 most common causes of death in the United States. So we have to pay attention to stress. We have to pay attention to adversity. We focus a lot on these high-risk behaviors, and then we just say, well, I don't want my child doing this. I don't want my child, to be depressed, or to use substances, misuse substances, or to engage in smoking, or you look at these high-risk behaviors and you say, well, I don't want my child to do this, right? But we have to look at the other side. We have to look at everything. And that's why I have this nice little pyramid for you, because we don't want to just look at the adverse childhood experiences, which are very important, right? And we want to prevent them from happening. So we have to look into social conditions, our community adverse environments. We have to look at historical trauma and systemic injustices, because there are systemic injustices and systems put in place that affect individuals before they are even born. So we have to pay attention to all of that. We know that historical trauma, social conditions, what's going on in your community, in our cities, Along with adverse childhood experiences, all of that can lead to disruptive neurodevelopment, which then leads to cognitive impairment, the adoption of health risk behaviors that can then develop into diseases, disabilities, social problems, and ultimately an early death. If we want to prevent this, we cannot just pick a block, right? We have to look at the entire pyramid. Right? And here I'm just going to talk really quick. We want to make sure that we look at experiences and environments. What experiences are your children having right now? What environments are they having? Are they positive or negative? So here we see life trajectories. And we can see, we'll look at the dark blue line. Someone that is a child that is in a family that is struggling right now financially, is experiencing economic hardship, right? The child is about 3 years old. You see that the lifeline, right? The life started in a pretty low point. But then they were encountered by a positive school environment where the teachers were caring. They had a small classroom size, and the teachers had the funding to provide all the school supplies that they need, and the parents are welcome in the school, and they engage, and they have a social worker that can provide services as well. All of that, you see how it bumped up, right? It helped mitigate that negative experience, right? And help bring up that life trajectory. Now, the child is a young adult and they have access to care thanks to a community health clinic. Great. We see that the life trajectory keeps going up. Let's say that now they are an adult, right? And the pandemic hits and they lost their job. That's a negative experience. You see that the life trajectory took a dip, but it was nowhere near where they started. So you see how positive experiences and environments help mitigate this. So when you're looking at stress and we're looking at the struggles that our children are going through, I also want you to think, what can I bring to the table that is positive? What positive experiences can I bring to the life of my child, to my community? What can I take advantage in my community to engage in those positive environments and experiences? Right? So now let's go into the what can we do? And this is my favorite part. So I wanted to end this training with 5 concrete things that you could do. Right? Hopefully this helped you identify and give you some background as to how we experience stress and the different types of stress that we can experience, as well as the manifestations. The first thing that we can do if we want our children if we want to focus on our children's well-being, mental health, we want to change the way that we talk about mental health. We want to change our attitudes towards feelings and talking about emotions, both positive and negative. So I want you to validate your child's emotions and feelings. And we'll talk about this right now. This is the Wheel of Emotions. There are multiple ones. I encourage you to just Google Wheel of Emotions and use the one that you think is a best fit for your family. But you want your child to be able to identify the feelings that they are having. If we're not able to identify how we feel, it's just stuck there. And that's the stress that is just stuck and we're not able to process, right? But if I'm able to feel and say, oh, I'm feeling this way, and then you find out, oh yeah, I'm feeling fear. But it's a more specific type than just fear. I'm worried. What am I worried about? And once you identify that, then you can say, okay, what can I do with this feeling? But if we don't know how to identify it, then it's going to be very difficult to find out what to do. So you want to talk about feelings and emotions frequently, not just when your child is feeling a certain way. So talk about it on a Saturday morning after breakfast and say, all right, let's talk about all the different types of feelings. By the end of elementary school, with the students that I worked with the students I was working on under regulation, I would my goal was for them to know every single part of this wheel and for them to be able to tell me of a time that they felt this way. And if they haven't felt this way in their life yet, right, I would say, okay, in what situation would you feel this way? So make that a goal for your children, for them to be able to identify those feelings and relate it to their life. That is going to be a very, very important block to start with their with a healthy having emotional health, right? Now, another one that I want you to do, so after you have talked about feelings and they feel comfortable talking about feelings and they're able to understand this, then take it a little bit further and incorporate the wellness wheel. And there are multiple ones. So I want you to do regular check-ins with your kiddos where you are talking about the checklist that you saw, right? The way that stress can be expressed, can be manifested. I want you to talk about the feelings and emotions and give them that knowledge. And then I want you to incorporate a wellness wheel. This is one from us from the UNLV Student Wellness Center. There are multiple ones. There's another one here. This one's a well-being indicator tool for youth. And I sent Valeria all these links if anyone wants them. And this one is from the University of Minnesota. But do regular check-ins with your child and with yourself. It's all of us. Do a family one if you can. And talk about all these different areas. And how are they doing? It can be weekly check-ins and for each of these 7 dimensions. And for occupational, for a youth would be school. And you don't want to just ask, well, how's school going, right? Think about what have you been learning in school? How are you feeling with your teachers? How's your relationship with your teachers if they have multiple teachers and subjects, right? Do you feel overwhelmed with homework right now? Can I, as a parent, do anything to support you on this area? Are you connecting with the teacher, telling the teacher, what can I do to support you? To support you since you're supporting my child and you had to get adjusted to all of these new things, right? What can I do as a parent to support you, right? And you're using, and when you do check-ins with your child, you get to see how they're doing in that specific area. With spirituality, it would be their values, their character, their ethics, their enthusiasm. How do they feel about life? Are they excited about life? How do they talk about it? Do they say, oh, I just don't care? These conversations should be happening. You say, and for example, with intellectual, it can be, how are they doing with their time management, with their preparation, their imagination, their memory? Are they starting to be very forgetful? Since the pandemic started, it's just been a struggle trying to remember things. They can share that with you. You want to give them that safe space when they are able to talk and guide them. So a lot of times we just ask, how are you doing? How was school? And that's not giving them a lot of help in what to respond, right? So what your child is going to say, I can tell you, they're going to say, it was okay. It was fine. What else would my student say? It's all right. It's all right.
What do you do today?
Hmm?
Nothing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Was good.
What did you do? Nothing. It's okay. And believe me, a lot happened. I can tell you, I was there in school. A lot happens. But sometimes, and especially with younger children, if you can establish this earlier on in life, it's going to really help build those conversations. If you, and this is key, if you are the parent of a teenager and you have not talked to them a lot about feelings and their life experiences and what's going on with them, remember, for any parent right now, you cannot force your child to share. You cannot force your child to stop doing something. You cannot force your child to tell you what's going on. We cannot do that. They can straight up lie to you. They can say, I don't want to tell you. They're not forced to. No one is. No human is. What you can do and what you want to do is for them to want to tell you. And think about it. How would I get someone to want to tell me how they're doing? I need to create a safe space for them. I need to maybe provide them with some guidance, right, on the different areas of their life that they may just not realize that are there and that they are experiencing things regarding these areas. I need to be open and non-judgmental. So if your child says that they just broke up with their girlfriend of 2 weeks and they're having a rough time and they just really heartbroken, you don't want to respond with, well, just get over it. It was just 2 weeks. What is your child going to think? My parent doesn't care. I'm not going to tell anything else about my relationships with my parent because I didn't like that response. So I am not going, they don't understand my feelings, and you don't. So you want to seek to understand them. Say, I can imagine, that you feel heartbroken. It seems like you really liked her, right? You really liked them. You really liked him. And seek to understand the situation that they are in. Be open about it. Because if we respond immediately and it's a negative response, or we say, well, in my days, I didn't do this, or, you are overreacting to this, your child is just going to hide it from you. And that's it. And there's nothing you can do about it. They can hide everything from you. Everything that's going on in their life, they can just not say it. So you want them to want to say it to you. You have to be open, non-judgmental, and create a safe space. Okay, so the wellness wheel is very important. Talk about these different areas. How are they doing socially, physically? Are they having muscle aches, right? Or do they feel lethargic? All of that is really going to help be of having a well-rounded understanding of how your child is doing, and it's going to help them understand how they are doing. So use that on yourself, on your family, with your kids. It's going to be very important. And it can take just an hour conversation with the entire family, or it can be just a 10-minute conversation with your child. Okay? So this is another one, and it's very similar. So just you are the expert in your family, use the one that you think would work best for you. Okay, turn the checklist that I told you, turn that into questions. So ask your child, have you been moody or frustrated lately? Do you feel overwhelmed? What does overwhelmed feel like? Feels like you have a lot going on and you cannot control it and it just keeps piling up. Is that a feeling that you've ever had or that you are having right now? Is your child using negative self-talk and saying, I cannot do this, I'm terrible at this, I'm not even gonna try? Are they using negative self-talk? That's a big indicator as well. So evaluate how your child is doing, how you are doing. Ask questions to your child from 1 to 10, with 10 being the most active and productive that you can be. How's your energy doing? Or for younger children, I would use the thumb up, thumb down. Thumb up is I'm doing great, I have a lot of energy. Thumb down is like, ugh, I don't feel like doing anything. So I would use this a lot with my students, right? How are you feeling today? And some children will be like, or completely down, or saying, I'm doing great. And it just helps us, right? It helps me understand where they're at, and I would behave differently, right? I would say, oh, okay, I know that they're a little bit tired today. So it's expected for them to not finish everything at the same time, right? As other children. They may need a little break, right? And that helped me be more understanding on their needs. So it's very helpful to do that, okay? Are you having any worrying? Are you worrying about something? And at first they may say no, but maybe, and explore that, okay? And you can use the wheel for that. Anything at school going on, that you can think of as to why you feel worried, or anything here in the family or with a friend. Maybe they say, oh yeah, you know what? I did got into an argument with my friend. Maybe that's why I'm feeling this worried. I have this worry feeling inside of me. And they couldn't figure it out before. They wouldn't even thinking about it a lot, but it was there. And then you help them explore and find out the root of it. There's a root to the feelings that we're having. It could be something that happened a year ago that came back. And by talking about it, you're helping them explore and find out where is it coming from. And if we're not able to, it's always great to go and find an expert that can help us out. Okay, so tell them if they have any changes in appetite, if they're avoiding responsibilities, procrastinating, or not wanting to talk to anyone. All of those, turn them into questions and ask yourself, ask your children, have open conversations about this. Okay, other activities that I like to do. Shout out to the Latino Youth Leadership Conference on this one. I learned this in a conference that I attended in high school. I used it with my students. I still use it in my life. So either talk about highs and lows. So what were your highs and lows for the day? Or two roses and a thorn. The roses are two beautiful, lovely things that happen to you, and a thorn is something not so great, right? Or something that bugged you, something that maybe hurt your feelings, something that was just not great. Or thumbs up, thumbs down. So all of these have the same concept. The purpose of this is for your child to be able to find positive things that happen in their day, and then things that weren't that great. Okay? And then have meaningful conversations. Since you are already either reading books with your kid or watching movies or TV shows, take advantage of that and talk about the characters and talk about how the characters are feeling, right? You're watching Phineas and Ferb. How does Candace feel when she can never, get the mom to find out what Phineas and Ferb are up to? How do you think she feels? She probably feels frustrated, Mom. Yeah, you know what? I think she does. And what expressions does she do that lets you think that she's feeling frustrated? Oh, she scrunches her face, right? Her voice level gets louder, and have conversations about that. Use that time that you spend with your kids as a learning experience. Hey, and give your child some power to make decisions. Not power over you, not authority over you, but you're giving them some power of decision making. That's going to help them feel like they belong, because they do, right? You want them to belong and feel like they belong to your family because they are part of your family. So it can be something like helping them choose a weekly activity for your family to do. Involve them in any family problem solving when appropriate. If you're saying, you know what, I think we might have to move from this apartment to another area in town. Which area do you think we should? Let's investigate, right? And you're involving them in that process. That is going to help them feel like they belong and they have some say, which they should, right? Give them options when going grocery shopping and say, what would you like for dinner today or this week? You can choose one dinner. It has to have a vegetable and a protein, right? They cannot just say mac and cheese. You're giving them, some sort of limitations, but they still have the freedom to select what they want. So that is going to also boost up their confidence and that sense of belonging. Okay. When it comes to coping strategies, the first thing is that we have to take care of ourselves as parents, and we have to model healthy coping strategies, right? And that's part of us taking care of ourselves. So the checklist that I gave you on manifestations of stress, take a look at it. What are you feeling? How are you doing in some areas, in all of the areas? Do we need to focus on using some healthy coping strategies in some to reduce stress? And have your child see it. So with positive self-talk, maybe you use positive self-talk, but you don't say it out loud, right? You think it, right? You say, you got this. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna rock this, but you're saying it in your mind, right? Every now and then, try to say it out loud so your child can see it. So they can see, oh yeah, when I feel stressed or when I feel like maybe I'm nervous on something, I can say some reassuring thoughts to myself.
And I think that this is so important, Mayra, because sometimes we don't know how like you said, stress is always there. So you have to just learn how to cope with it, and that makes you feel a little bit better, not to think that, oh my God, why did I react this way? And learn, to end, because I'm running out of time. What would it be your best coping strategies that you can leave to children and to parents? Based on your case or on your experience, what are the best ones that we can take away today from the training?
Here, I'll put the list right here as we're ending. Okay, so some that have worked really great with the students that I work with and for me. One is having a quiet area. The quiet area is not a punishment. It's a place where your child can calm down. I'll give you an example. For my portable, it was an area in my portable that had a blanket it had a feather, it had some paper, 3 colors, a pencil. And when a child was feeling overwhelmed, before they talked to me, or if they felt like they couldn't talk to me at that moment, I would say, do you want to use the quiet area? They would use the feather, right? Touch it to calm down, do some breathing exercises. I had an oil diffuser, whatever works for your child. So it had some of those tools for them to de-escalate. Some of them would write down what was happening because they couldn't verbalize it, because they were so overwhelmed, with their emotions. And that just really helped. When we were having negative interactions, so if you feel like you're starting to raise your voice at your child, and your child is doing the same, and it's just a matching competition, you can put a pause and say, you know what, I need to go to my quiet area, and do you want to go to your quiet area, and we can calm down, because I don't want to yell at you. I love you, I care for you, and we will talk about this, but when we are in a more calm state. So that really helps out. Breathing exercises work very well for people, but for some students it didn't work. But what really worked was doing a body scan and relaxing your body. So we started from the head or from the toes, and would do, okay, swirl your head. Wow, my neck cracked. Swirl your head, then your shoulders, then you go to your arms, right? Your fingers, your hips, and you go all the way down. So when a child was feeling anxious or overwhelmed, and breathing exercises didn't work, that one tend to work really, really well. Okay, so those would be my top ones. Journaling helps a lot too for some students that struggle talking but have a lot in their mind. Journaling, or some of my students may even do comic strips. My high school students would do comic strips on how they were feeling or things that happened to them, and that helped them really talk more in depth about that. So whatever works for your child, just give them tools and see which tools work for them.
Mayra, I want to really thank you for your time today. I know that we are running short of time, but I want to invite you to come back, and maybe we can do this again, because there is the topic and we had a lot of people watching. So also I put all the links in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel also free to reach out to me, and I can send you the slides and all the resources, and I will make sure that I post everything that Mayra shared with us today. And I will invite you to come back maybe in 2 weeks, and we can continue talking about this, because I think that there's so much information, and like not knowing how to cope and not knowing that stress is always there sometimes makes it a little bit difficult. But thank you again for taking the time.
Yes, no, it's a pleasure.
Thank
you so much. And like I said, I can talk about this for hours.
No, you're so good and so informed. Just it's an hour, and we just run a little bit time, because they have a lot of parents and a lot of discussion, so which is a good sign. But I want to thank everyone that watched us today, and we'll be back in a week or two with Mayra again to talk and bring and continue learning about this topic that is something that everybody's talking about, and parents are paying attention now, because kids don't come with a manual, and we weren't really necessarily taught this when we were growing up. But thanks again, Mayra, and I appreciate your time, and I see you soon.
Yes, we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.